We're going.
This is for Kirk.
Yeah. This is just a supplemental log to our Byronic compendium. In your life, you meet people that make a huge impact, and I mean literally and figuratively. This fella, Kirk Ellard, was, very simply, he was one of the greatest human beings to ever grace the earth. And luckily, both Byron and I had some interactions with Kirk. He joined a band that I was in just prior to his death. I'm not giving anything away here. And it really meant a lot to me. And along your studio journey, you met Kirk a couple of times. And the thing about Kirk is everybody who met Kirk thought, this guy knows what I'm all about. This guy gets me. I get him. He's awesome. He was larger than life, literally 6'3", 300 pounds, crazy bass player. He could play anything. He could sing like a bird. Great inventive ideas. And like so many other people, was struck down in the prime of life with cancer.
So so that was around the middle of the 90s and stuff like that. I had not met him through that way. I had actually, I think around that time, I was at another studio, sort of doing this album called The Alien, the Rabbit and the Monkey. And so we were sort of apart for 4 years. But I remember, but we always kept in contact. But I remember one day you invited me over to your place of work. So there was a studio there and Healy Disc and stuff like that. And I always remember it just being, it was a multi-level office building. It was a lot of people working.
2 levels.
Yeah, well, it seemed...
The ground level was a studio.
That would be multi.
Level. That's true, more than one. There were floors. And
there were, there was quite a beehive of activity, and it was always music or doing album covers, design, or there was musicians. So there was always that stuff laying around, that musicians, cables always laying around, and
it was an awesome environment.
Yeah,
really cool.
So those are always fun places to be around with lots of other people, the politics of that, and for the good and the bad. So so I never really met Kirk till I had finished my album, The Alien, the Rabbit and the Monkey, after 4 or 5 years. And you told me one day, you gave me a call and you said, there's somebody that's really into the album that you made, and I think you should come down and meet him. He's just he's head over heels with the thing that you did.
Chuffed.
And chuffed, yeah. So it's always nice to have somebody that's chuffed about you or your work or stuff like that. And so that's how I met Kirk. It was Kirk that was sort of chuffed, and I'd never known, or I'd never sort of met anybody that was a force du jour, as I call them. Would that be proper? A freak of nature. I always consider some actors just sort of like they're a force, like Jack Black. Jack Black is just a crazy guy to me. He's just non. Have you ever seen him in Tenacious D? He's got a band. Well, anyways, he's always doing. He's always doing stuff, and he's just got this force field around him.
Yeah. If anybody out there knows Kirk, they know exactly what you're speaking about. He was like a magnet in the room, and like people just turned to him and started going to him. He was gracious, humble, funny as hell.
So you're always lucky in life to meet people like that. These sort of social catalysts that just sort of
absolutely,
that just sort of are just sort of the center of everybody else and stuff like that. And so when I first met him, I mean, how can you not like him? I mean, he loved sort of that album that I had done, and he couldn't say but nice things to me. But I found something analogous to the experience that I had growing up, and it was akin to sort of the asteroid that hits that hit with the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Sort of one of those
65 million years ago.
seismic events that totally changes continents. And he told me about the day that he got the Beatles bug when he was really young, and that just sort of changed his world right then and there. And I remember that moment too. I mean, we've talked about it. Just there was this one moment, one day, and I still remember standing there where the Beatles hit me, and he had that same experience. And I remember him telling me that he basically closed his doors and nobody ever saw him for like the next 3 or 4 years. And all he did was listen to the Beatles. He was completely consumed and hooked, and whatever that talismanic thing that the Beatles have, that X factor. So we had a kinsmanship right then and there that was just wonderful. I was almost blown away. I'd never met anybody like him previously. So, but that's not to say I don't go out a lot and I don't meet a lot of people. I'm not part of the community. I'm sure there's tons of talented people, stuff like that. But that was the first sort of person I had met that was just a crazy fuck. And sorry for the language, but it reminds me much of myself. Just a crazy fuck. So it was wonderful. And you're right. He was very positive in his feelings, and those are the type of people that I gravitate toward. The older I get, it's not good to be around. I just don't.
It wasn't tiring to be around him. It was comforting, always comforting.
So you find people in your life like that. You always want to sort of stick with them.
You want them to like what you're doing. You want them to take part in it. You want them to be part of your life as much as you can make them. Yeah.
So that was early. What would that be?
Mid-90s.
98, stuff like that. And then for a few more years, he also played in the Hooblers.
Well, he didn't play in the Hooblers after the Hooblers.
Okay, after the Hooblers
dissolved, and because even when I left the Hooblers, they still put out a couple albums in Europe, but it was kind of dissipating. And then after that wrapped up, I called Mike out of the blue one day and said, we should just hang out and jam, and we did. And so, but we ended up making a little combo, medium fi. It was not hi fi. It wasn't quite lo fi. It was somewhere in the middle. That's how the medium fi thing came. Anyways, we did the quietest music known to man with the least amount of chords. I would just be noodling little fractured things while Mike does his heartfelt, beautiful songs. And not thinking that anybody would like it at all, because it was interesting to us. We always said, let's see how quiet we can play. And then along came Kirk. And one day at work, he said, let me come and hear what you guys are doing. I said, well, we're just really simple. Let me come out here. He came out, and true to form, he absolutely fell in love with it. The simplicity of it and the non-enormity of what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
He loved it. And he brought his bass the next time and said, can I be in the band? We were like, what?
Was he a bass player?
You want to be the leader?
Was that his prime instrument, bass?
I think it was prime instrument.
He just noodled on a lot of other stuff.
I've always said,
one of those guys.
The most impressive guys I've met in life, Kirk, you, Mike Hart, even then you think of the pro guys, the ones I tend to gravitate to the most and think for me are the most creative sort of tend to dissolve down onto bass. I consider it probably the most melodic instrument if you're not just root, third, fifth, whatever. But if you're picking out little melodies also, that's the best.
Absolutely. So he did you guys do any recordings or anything like that?
Yeah, we recorded a number of songs, and like you, I've got drives of stuff that Mike and Kirk and I did as take one, because at this point, we're not trying to multi-track. We are absolutely putting two Neumanns up in the room or something and going, whatever we capture, that's the beauty. It's not the technological end of it. So I've got a bunch of takes, and the fact that the second time he came out and he brought his 4001D bass, the Rickenbacker, which he fucking loved, he was singing and playing stuff that just took it to a whole other place. You know, like you, he could just find the beauty in anything and bring it out. It was the simplicity of what he did, and his choices were immaculate.
So he was such a sort of a little crazy nut. You were giving me a little story about the Beatles stuff that he would do. He would replace, so like he would...
Sorry to monopolize this, but
No.
you know, I
No,
have
this is
great
about
joy
Kirk. This is
when we
about
talk
Kirk.
with Kirk. I have great joy. The way he shared, and I'm sure everybody felt this way, that, you know, I knew that Kirk and I had a special bond. It was special, like, than everybody else's. But when I talked to people, everybody had that certain thing with him. Like, no, Kirk and I had a special thing, because he had that key that fit into everybody's lock. He knew myself and he were the Beatles freakazoids. So he called me one night at like 11 o'clock and told me, "You got to come over here, dude. Got to come over here. Check out what I did." So of course I get in the car and go. And he has his multi-track thing set up in his apartment. It was in the West End. And he said, "Check this out." And he just hit play. And it was, I forget which album of the Beatles. It was one of the earlier ones where it's kind of more Scooby-Doo. I'm not a big early Beatles guy as much. Like, I love their psychedelic period. But he had basically taken the album, thrown on his multi-track, on his stereo tracks, and then just instrument by instrument replaced the instruments and the vocals, and then eventually taken off the Beatles tracks. And it was eerily close, but still Kirkified. And I was just amazed that he would just take the time on his own to do that, you know, after all the things he was involved in. He was producing a band called Everly at the time. Maybe people remember Everly. It was a young,
Right.
you know, alternative rock kind of band.
He produced an album?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and he got them a little deal in New York State. I
Right.
believe it was New York State.
Yeah.
This is all right close to the end of his passing.
Hmm.
What the hell was I talking about?
Just sort of, his...
Oh, the Beatles thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the
And
Beatles
so
thing.
he had stripped off the Beatles tracks at the end and just wanted to play me the results. And I'm sure there's a few people out there that have also heard this effort of his. But he was magic, you know. And so I'll let you take the conversation.
Yeah,
for
well,
a bit
just
here.
indulging in his wonderful craziness, I guess. To do sort of that, be something I would never do myself, but it's something that I totally get. And it's wonderful that he just wants to explore those parts of his brain and stuff like that, and just sort of do the music.
There's a pretty poignant aspect to the whole Kirk story that has an insane parallel to Byron's life. And not that is the impetus of this episode, but I think that it really, really, really has a significant impact to the story. And Byron said earlier in our, pre-show meeting that he was going to tell this story. So I'm going to let him.
Sure, we just talking about connections and stuff. So Kirk was always somebody that was always and likewise me to him. I think we were sort of one of two people very encouraging towards each other and the music. And so about 2008 for myself, still playing a lot of hockey, and I had a studio in my apartment at that time, writing lots of stuff. And I had an injury in a hockey game where I got, as a goalie, somebody did a one-timer very close, so somebody took a slap shot up close and drilled me in my athletic protector, what they called a jock. And it broke my jock. And I've been hit there a million times. It's almost seems to be the goal of people that are, especially guys that I play a lot of hockey with. They're not as interested in scoring on me as they are interested in putting the puck either off my head or hitting me in the neck or hitting me in where the crown jewels seem to be the sport of the people I played with. But I got hit again in the jock, and it broke my jock, and it was probably the hardest shot I think I've ever felt. I almost felt my insides when I got hit there. And I was usually a goalie that would get up and play, but that was one of those times I had to sort of skate around a couple times to get my breath. It took my breath away.
Did the guy feel bad immediately?
No, it was what it was. It wasn't the first time he's wound up from 2 feet away and ripped me. And I did save it, so that was maybe the best thing about it. So a few weeks later, I knew I'd sort of done some damage in that area, but I sort of put my hand down there a couple weeks later, and something didn't feel right, and so I finally went and got to a walk-in clinic. I'd never seen a doctor before.
Never gone to a doctor before?
No. So I was 47.
In your life?
Maybe when I was 20 or something, but yeah, up to that point, no. Like a lot of guys, and being a goalie, it was always, I'd grown up to not be injured, and if I was injured, just get up. Son, did you break a bone? Then get up and take the next day. It was always
walk it off.
Yeah, it was always a goalie thing to walk it off. I'd probably been concussed a million times, but they always say you get back up and play the game and stuff like that. I'd never been to a doctor before, so I went into a walk-in clinic. So a couple months later, I had an ultrasound. Turns out I had testicular cancer.
Wait for the...
Yeah. That was February 2008 that I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. However, they caught it early enough, and because I was in good shape, hockey shape, I was given a 90% chance of surviving it. However, I had to go... So it took me 4 months, 5 months. I did go through chemotherapy. I had 4 or 5 rounds of chemotherapy to kill the cancer, because the cancer had actually spread into my stomach a bit. So I also had 2 operations. The operation at the end was the big one, because the chemo killed all the cancer, so they had to go into my stomach and grab all the crap there and get it all that. So that was a big operation. That was like a 6-hour operation. However, 5 months later, I was back on the ice playing hockey, and so that would be the winter. So that'd be February 2008. So the winter. So early 2009, I got a call from Steve, and Steve said, "Kirk's in the hospital," and I said, "Oh, what does he have?" And it turns out Kirk had the same thing that I had. He had testicular cancer. However, his was had become much more invasive, and he got his diagnosis much too late. I think the cancer had already gone from his testicles all the way up into his brain by the time he was diagnosed.
I remember when he had his slight remission there. You can just imagine how, devastating it would be to hear those words from a doctor. Thank whatever the great deity is that got you into that weird situation, that got you to look at it, to take care of it. Can you imagine in Kirk's case where the doctor says, I remember he told me that the doctor said, you're like, in essence, you're riddled with it now. Like, it's so late. But even then, because, everybody was just thinking, well, because it's Kirk, he's going to beat it. Like, he's got to beat it. What do you mean? Like, no, he's going to get better. And he did get better for a little bit. Like, remember, he was going out, like, after the hospital, and, I guess everybody's fooling themselves, because it got to a point where he was in the hospital and he didn't come out again, and it got pretty bad pretty quick. It's
brutal if you don't catch it early enough, and it's more brutal for me to say, and I'll say it once on this video, that if I didn't get hit in the nuts, I probably wouldn't be here on this video, because whether I had the cancer before I had my injury, or something triggered it because of my injury. I only got checked up because of my injury, and that's when they discovered that I had testicular cancer and it had already spread. So
that is the weirdest thing of all when I tell the story to people, is just the synchronicity.
So I remember when he passed away, I remember you telling me that you had some recordings that Kirk... Where had Kirk... You had some recordings of Kirk. You had some mixes, some stuff that... songs that he had done, his own songs. Mm-hmm. Where would he have recorded these at Distortion Studios? Would these...
I think he probably would have done this in his own little multi-track at home.
So, what I had heard, what you had versions of stereo versions of his voice, maybe double-tracked with a couple of double-tracked acoustic guitars. You had 4 songs.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know if the 4-song EP was called Compunction, but I remember that being.
He was going to have an EP coming out. Was that he was halfway through it? Were these songs supposed to?
I don't really know. I got them somehow from him. 4 songs.
Yeah, he'd probably be like me, thinking he has a lot of time ahead of him to do something. He probably had a million things on the go.
Yeah, well, yeah. At the time,
finished.
At the time he was working with that band Everly near the end, and he really enjoyed producing, and I think he really enjoyed working with young musicians. And
so he produced an album. It was a young band or whatever, and they did an album at Distortion. What type of band were they? Were they like a pop band?
They might have done it in Kingston, because I think they're from Kingston, Everly, and he would go down there and meet with them and record with them and do whatever. He was single, so he had lots of time in his hands.
What type of band were they? Were they just sort of alternative pop?
Yeah, that'd be early in the 2000s, right?
So he was indulging, spending a lot of his time doing that stuff as well.
I think he really liked that the most, producing, because he liked all kinds of music.
So you gave me one of the songs. You said you had 4 of his songs at that time. So that was 11 years ago. You gave me one song, and I don't know the title of it. But it was
we'll try to write as much as we can down here, the stuff that we're
I wish
missing.
I knew what the title was, and I wish I knew what the lyrics were, but
these are authentic podcasts. We don't know what's going on until we push the record button.
But you specifically gave me something Kirk had done. It was a stereo acoustic guitar mixed with some double-track vocals. Super Beatle-esque. I don't know what the lyrics were, but however, I took it home and spent a couple of days. I tracked some instruments and put a drum loop behind it.
Did you beat detective it, or did you just kind of go freeform?
Well, interestingly, I just found this song a couple of weeks ago, because I'm again going through my hard drives, going through a million things. And this is why we're doing this, because I found this song, and it looks like Kirk, looking at it now, looks like Kirk had done this song to a click track previously. So it was just a matter of me just sort of figuring it out. It doesn't take me long to figure these things out, it seems, in my world. And so, so I just tracked... because he wasn't around, I just tracked some instruments for him and put a sort of a small band behind him for this wonderful song that he did that I don't know what the title of it is.
Well, we'll figure out the title, we'll put it here, and we'll also play the original version right here.
Sure. And it's a wonderful, wonderful song. I wish Kirk was here today. I would have loved to have more of his... getting really, it's interesting talking to somebody that loves music and stuff like that, but once you get really into his song, stuff like that, you really have a deeper admiration for his music and his musicality. And I sort of remember sort of working on the song 11 years ago, just sort of doing it for a couple of days, and just sort of revisiting it this week just reminds me of what a talent he was. And yeah, so I put these instruments together, and so I did a mix of it, and I thought instead of it sitting on a hard drive, that...
I hope nobody got my password from that, me typing that there, because then the whole world would be able to get into my world.
And they will.
The whole
And
world
so it's more important that...
I always have the mouse upside down, so of course it's not going where I expect it to go.
More important, Kirk's song is put on YouTube.
All right, did you want to take a listen?
I'd like to.
All right, here we go. This is Byron's updated version of...
Open your mind up, bothered some time to find the light fit in your view. And when the days comes over some time, you'll find that I'm not fitting with you. So all you gotta do, keeping your eyes shut, trying to find a line that leads you to your room. Calming yourself down, convincing yourself in time that it's not gonna break you. Watch as the day melts into night. You could be anything you wanna be, and if the days were denying, sit around in lost desire. Open your eyes up, if only to find a point where nothing comes too soon. All things around you mean nothing at all. So now I'm not tripping with you. Watch as the day melts into night. You could be anything you wanna be, and if the days were denying, sit around in lost desire. Run away, mile ahead. I'm this way from watching you. No desire to pull me through. Sit around in lost desire. I'm still alive, I'll make it through. Can't disguise my panic view. And in the face of silence, I'll be right back with you. By the way, I'm not quite with you. Watch as the day melts into night. You could be anything you wanna be, and if the day's worth denying, sit around in lost desire.
I also hear, like, Crosby, Stills, Nash.
Oh yeah,
layerings
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. But it's real. It's listening to that again. It's so XTC, and XTC is a brilliant band. Those
Andy
vocals.
Partridge.
Andy Partridge is the name. Yeah, it's got Andy Partridge written all over it. It's a wonderful song.
Without 13/6 time signatures.
Without 13/6 times signatures. It's a wonderful song. It's beautiful.
Yes, and like Kirk's eccentric sort of, well, not even eccentric, just all-encompassing love, you can hear all those different bands in there. You can hear the influences. I think all it would take would be taking the original track and copying the layers, making a little more mastering of it so you can bring those vocals out, so when you bring your stuff in to be a little more discreet, you know?
Yeah, I think I remember once asking if there's any way we can get our hands on the separate tracks at some time. But
I'm wondering about that. Like, I wonder who, keeps his stuff. It's probably his brother.
There was I was trying to do something with take out the acoustic guitars and just grab his vocals, but I'm not that great of.
No, but I think there's stuff we could do to salvage like the original Kirk acoustics and vocal, which is probably the issue, because the acoustics and the vocals a lot of times take up the same ranges. And you still have to, I'm sure, micro manage those.
Yeah, it's something that it goes beyond my sort of job description. I don't know, but that's the general feel. That sounded wonderful listening to it on your thing.
So that I don't want to say that wraps the Kirk episode, but because he entered all of our lives time and time again.
He never left.
Yeah, that's true. Never has left, and I'm sure to most people he'll live forever because of the larger than life personality that he was.
Peace, love, Kirk.